moved to Bellweather 3 years ago after my mother passed away. It wasn't so much a choice as momentum. Her house was paid off and I didn't have anywhere else to land. Bellweather is the kind of town where people wave as they drive by, even if they don't recognize you. Where the diner staff remembers your order, even if you've only stopped in once. I took work where I could find it. Mostly substitute teaching, sometimes weekend shifts at the library when the high school schedule fell apart. Nobody asked many questions. They liked that I was reliable. I liked that they didn't dig. There was a quiet stillness to the place. A hush that settled behind closed curtains. Half the houses stood empty. The rest were filled with people who seemed to have hardened their routines into stone. Church on Sundays. Groceries on Wednesdays. Yard work until the first frost. Then silence until spring. Sometimes I think the town was like a snow globe someone shook years ago. Now all the glitter had settled. And we were sitting in the calm, pretending it was still beautiful. That's why the painting felt so wrong. The town art competition was held in the converted church hall, the same place used for weddings, funerals, elections, and bake sales. You could still see the faint outline of the old crucifix on the far wall, bleached where sunlight once hit it before someone covered it with beige paint. I wasn't supposed to be judging. I filled in because the regular judge had shingles, and someone remembered I taught high school art for one semester before the budget cuts. They said I had a good eye, which really meant I was quiet and unlikely to argue. Most of the entries were exactly what you'd expect. Oil landscapes copied from Bob Ross tutorials. Watercolor dog portraits that all looked slightly melted. A kid submitted a clay sculpture that collapsed in its box on the way in. That one was my favorite. At least it was honest. Then I noticed the butterfly. It hadn't been there before. Maybe it slipped in during the rush. It hung dead center. No frame. No name. Just canvas and a butterfly. I'd seen photorealism before. Hyperrealism. Digital illusions. This wasn't that. It didn't just look real. Felt real. That's the only way I can explain it. Like it had been pinned there while still breathing, and the moment the brush touched it, it forgot how. Its wings were spread. A blue so deep it made black seem loud. The body had a texture that dragged up words I hadn't used in years. Velvet, bone, oil. There was nothing behind it. Just a blank white void. Like it had been painted onto the idea of a canvas rather than the canvas itself. People started crying. Not all of them, but most. Soft sniffles. A woman covered her mouth. Even the mayor, the one who always said he didn't understand art, stood with his hat in his hands, nodding slowly. I stood there for 10, maybe 15 minutes, waiting to feel what they felt. Nothing came. I felt fine. Unmoved. Outside of it, like I'd missed an announcement everyone else received. Eventually I muttered something, incredible work, or nice piece, and drifted toward the refreshment table for air. That's when I saw Alice. She stood a few feet from the painting. Pale. Maybe 17. Hoodie with stretched sleeves, scuffed sneakers. Completely still. Her eyes were locked on the butterfly, like she'd forgotten how to blink. I watched longer than I should have. First I thought she might be asleep on her feet. Then I thought she was crying. She was doing neither. Just staring, with the same expression I'd once seen on a man at his wife's funeral. Not grief exactly, reverence. Like something ancient was ending, and she had finally accepted it. I cleared my throat as I stepped closer. Hey, you okay? For a moment she didn't respond. Then she blinked slowly, looked at me, really looked, and said, almost in a whisper, I didn't know it could feel like this. I thought I missed my chance. Then she turned back to the butterfly, and I stood there with nothing to say. In the days after the show, the town felt lighter. That's the only word that fit. Like someone had loosened an invisible knot in everyone's chest overnight. People who'd avoided each other for years started talking again. I saw the Whitcomb brothers hugging in the middle of Main Street like one of them had come back from war. Mrs. Halpin brought a pie to her ex-husband's house and cried on the porch until he hugged her. The Hendersons, who hadn't spoken since Christmas, held hands in the grocery store, smiling like teenagers. Everything softened. The town felt washed in warm water. Kindness bloomed quietly and fast, the way mold spreads through drywall before you notice it. But none of it reached me. I kept waiting for whatever had hit everyone else to catch up. Clarity, relief, even a small push. Instead, it passed straight through me, like I was made of glass. Even Jacob changed, and he was stubborn as they come. One afternoon I stopped by his garage and found him leaning back in a lawn chair, eyes closed, smiling up at the sky like someone was telling him a story only he could hear. "You okay?" I asked, nudging his boot. He blinked, like waking from a dream. "Never better," he said. "Feels like something finally broke loose." "What did?" I asked. He laughed softly, privately, like I'd missed the joke. When I mentioned the painting, he smiled again. "It was something, wasn't it?" He looked past me, as if something across the street was calling him. When I turned, there was nothing there. I walked home hollow. It wasn't just the painting anymore. It was me. Why hadn't I felt anything? What was wrong with me that I could look at something everyone else treated like a revelation and feel absolutely nothing? That question stayed with me. Later that night, locking up the school after a PTA meeting, I heard footsteps echoing down the hall. Alice appeared, wearing the same hoodie, the same distant stare. But now her cheeks were flushed, her eyes shimmering like half the town's. She stopped in front of me, breathing hard. "I didn't think you would choose me," she whispered. Her hands shook, not fear but overwhelm. "Who?" I asked. She glanced past me. A tall blonde girl, one of the basketball players, stood in the doorway, staring into the dim hall with that same softened expression. Alice smiled, small and trembling. "I didn't think it would choose me." After that, I started noticing the gaps. People spoke in hushed, tender tones, like they were sharing something holy. But now and then, I'd see someone standing apart, untouched, out of rhythm, like me. There was the man in the rusted Buick behind the hardware store. He'd always been there, a fixture you stopped noticing. He never begged, never spoke, just sat in the driver's seat, windows fogged from the inside, watching the world go by. After the painting, the town softened, but he didn't change at all. One day I passed close enough to catch his eyes. He stared straight ahead, unblinking, like he was waiting for a signal only he could hear. I waved. He didn't respond. Then there was Mrs. Laurie, the widow who walked the cemetery every morning before dawn. Same path, same 3 headstones. Her husband, her son, and one I didn't recognize. After the butterfly appeared, she didn't stop or smile or soften. She moved the same way as always. When I tried to offer her coffee, she looked at me like I'd interrupted a conversation I couldn't hear. Nathan at the post office didn't change either. Polite, efficient, alone his whole life. While couples danced barefoot in the park and strangers confessed buried love, Nathan walked his route with his mail clutched tight, jaw locked shut. When I tried to talk to him, he nodded once and walked away. I wondered if this was how I'd always looked. Quiet, inoffensive, sour without knowing it. Eventually, I found Mrs. Laurie sitting in the church, facing the blank wall where the painting had hung. I asked why she wasn't like the others. She didn't turn around. "There's no one left for me," she said simply. That answer stayed with me. Then the lights appeared. People stood on their porches holding candles they hadn't had seconds earlier. Groups walked down Main Street at midnight, humming something wordless. It sounded like memory passed mouth to mouth. Each night there were more. They didn't look possessed. They looked grateful, calm, certain. Alice walked with them, barefoot, face tilted toward the stars. Watching her hurt, I followed sometimes. On the 4th night, I saw a man and woman dancing beneath a lamppost. Blood ran slowly from the man's eye like a tired tear. No one reacted. That's when I started writing everything down. Eventually I stopped writing. And then they bloomed. I stood in the square and watched the town open itself. Skin parting gently, bodies unfolding without pain, without blood. No screams. Just relief, joy, surrender. They were happy. That was the truth that destroyed me. Something rose from their remains. Wings of light, love reshaped into something vast and impossible. Passed over me without pause. I was not chosen. They found me 3 days later, half buried in ash. When they asked what happened, I told them the only truth I had left. They were loved, I said, and I wasn't. I'm still here. I'm still me. Maybe that means something. Maybe it means nothing at all.